Hello and welcome to the Club Life podcast. I'm Darren Flynn, the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Clubs New South Wales, and in this episode we're going to take you to the small seaside village of Coledale, just north of Wollongong, where a club died only to be brought back to life by the local community. Today I'm joined by Melissa Ellery, the President of Coledale RSL, and Greg Todd, the Secretary Manager of the club. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, this really is a remarkable story of survival against all the odds. We're going to run through all of that in a moment, but Greg, first, can we talk about Coledale RSL prior to its closure in late 2022? What was the club like in those days?
It was slowly dying. It had no idea of how to survive. The board of directors had run out of ideas as to how to keep the club going outside of gambling. But the community wasn't all that interested in gambling, so we had to find new ideas and new ways for the club to grow. So the club was becoming depressing, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Now, COVID posed significant challenges for the hospitality industry across the board, but in particular for Coledale RSL. There was a time there in probably late 2022 where it looked like the doors might close potentially forever. Tell us about those difficult days.
Well, it was a combination of COVID as well as a couple of very wet summers. And those wet summers just meant that we weren't getting the people in the door. There was also a change in the way people felt about the club. It wasn't as enjoyable a place to go to. So the whole idea was to try and make the place a lot more enjoyable to go to.
Why do you think that change in atmosphere around the club occurred? What was it that made the club less enjoyable?
I just don't think that the people that were looking after, their heart was in their right place. They really did want the place to work, but I just don't think that they were able to tap into the community and to get the community there. There was a lot of ideas with clubs up and down the coast that you could survive on passing trade on the weekends. It doesn't work that way. You have to get your community in. They're the ones that are going to be there week after week to enjoy the club, to support the club. And that was what was missing, that connection with the community.
And I can jump in there too. I think I had moved to the area only 7 years ago as well, and the area had started to begin to change as well. We were getting a lot more people from Sydney, and the area definitely was becoming a lot more full of families and females, and I would say that the club had gone a little bit towards the male-dominant side. So that was probably one of the first things that we needed to tackle when we stood up to be on the board.
So late 2022, I think December of 2022, the doors closed. Was there a point in time where you thought the club may not reopen?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. When the doors closed, it was largely, it wasn't going to open again. We had a bit of a party on the final Saturday where a lot of the previous workers at the club came along. A lot of the community came out to say goodbye to the club. And at that point, I was on the board with one other bloke, and we were largely the only two that were still trying to come up with a solution.
It had gotten to the point where things were taken off the walls. There was no alcohol left in the club. It really had closed. It had been cleaned out completely. So it was a very lonely summer.
And so as the reality set in for the local population that they were now living in a world without a club, tell us about that community reaction that, across the board we had hundreds of people missing their local club. Tell us about the fight to bring that club back to life.
I think we moved down there because we loved the Coledale community so much. And it's like stepping back in time, I would say, a little bit. It's like a 1970s feel of being local. The world is a bit slower. It's beautiful. You live between the coast and the escarpment. It's a stunning place to live. But that club, when it closed, the hum and the heart of the community had definitely gone. And I think everyone felt it through that summer.
And Greg, the community lost its meeting place, essentially.
True. Lost its meeting place, lost its place where you enjoyed so many events in your life. I've been living down there for 34 years. I had my first beer with my son at the club when he turned 18. All those sorts of events, birthdays and funerals and all those sorts of events, etc. And that meant that the future generation couldn't do that. And that was something that, for me in particular, was very painful.
What followed was an absolutely Herculean effort from the community led by some key figures. Before we get into that, amalgamation would have been another opportunity for the club, and it probably would have been easier to find an amalgamation partner than to go through the work that you did to get the club back on its feet. Why did you decide not to go in that direction?
We did look at it. That was investigated through October in particular. We're looking at a club who were interested in amalgamating with us, but we have a landlord, which is the RSL, and the RSL weren't very much in favour of the amalgamation. And in hindsight, in thinking about it, I don't think it would have suited the club. I don't think the club would have been what it was before. It would not have brought the club back. It would have been a whole new club. And I don't know whether it would have suited that part of the coast.
Mel, I'll put this question to you because you're probably symptomatic of this community response because you were one of the people who you joined the board back in 2023. What prompted the community to spring into action in the way it did?
I think it was spearheaded by a few people, including Greg and a few other members on the board as well, that really wanted to pick individuals on that board that were going to come up with fresh ideas and new ways of doing things. And I think that was adamant that that was the way forward. And also, to Greg's point, the memories that everyone had at Coldale RSL and the fact that we'd lost a lot of clubs in the area was what really drove everybody to fight for the club.
Greg, can we get you to provide a bit of a how-to guide for other clubs that might be in a similar situation? Because 2022, we're looking at closure and then we're reopening in 2023. Give us an overview of what you had to do to get the club reopened.
It's an interesting question and it's not an easy answer. All I wanted to do was to find a way for the club to come back. And we actually sat down at a board meeting at the beginning of January last year where we were about to appoint the administrator to go through the business of closing the club permanently. It was at that meeting that bloke sitting next to me, a good friend of mine, said, it's been suggested we try it with volunteers. I said, yep, I'm in, let's have a crack at it. So it was then to bring people onto the board that were going to come up with ideas as to how to make that happen. There was no clear plan in my head except for getting the right people to come in to help and to come up with the ideas, like Mel in particular. There had to be new ideas. It had to be done differently. And I wouldn't have been the right person to come up with the new ideas. All I could do was what I'm doing now, the nuts and bolts. You needed the right blend of people. Somebody like me, I'd only just retired from work and I was an engineer and a project manager. We've got an electrician, we've got a landscape gardener, we've got Mel, an interior decorator, etc. It was just the right blend of people to come up with the right ideas, to work collectively and to then convince our members in the community that we could make this happen. And that was done at an extraordinary general meeting after we'd already put an email out and got 40 people responded to say yes, they would like to do volunteer shifts, etc. And that meant that, yes, okay, we formulated a more detailed plan as to how we were going to do that. And it just grew from this nucleus of people, and it is just a determination to succeed.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think the community really wanted to help, and I think it was about making sure that we were open and we were listening to the community the whole way. So it was really about that we were all doing it together, no matter what our position was.
Mel, serving on the board of a club is a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And with a club in the desperate straits that Coldale RSL was in, was it a difficult decision for you to put your hand up to join that board?
Yeah, I had to think about my family as well. I've got a young family, but also about the reputation. What happens if we had tried to do it and it fell over and we'd let all these people down? So I think that weighed a bit heavy on all of us because we live in a small town. But at the same time, if we sat on the sidelines, the club would have been closed as well. So it was worth trying. And if we didn't succeed, at least we'd given it everything that we had.
Well, you reopened in 2023. Today you've got 2 paid managers and a whopping 80 volunteers. I mean, reflecting on that figure, that's quite remarkable.
It's great. I think it's the passion of those early volunteers that showed how it could be done. And then we would have people from the community come and have a drink to support the club and put their money there. And then it would continue to grow. And I think that's how it has gotten to 80.
We had to work out how we were going to get 70 volunteers in with the right tickets, as in RSA, a certain number of them with RCG. So it was then, well, okay, well, we've got a meeting hall, which is a club. It's not doing anything else at the moment. Set up tables and chairs, brought in the educators and trained the volunteers to have their RSA, etc.
Yeah.
So it was all those sorts of things that had to be identified that needed to be done, but then to work out how to do it and the best way to do it, etc. So we kicked off when we opened the doors with 70-odd volunteers. A few of those have moved on, but we've got new people who've come in as volunteers, so we've kept that number going. When we opened, I said, well, okay, we've got 70 volunteers now. Hopefully that'll see us out through the year. and it's just kept going.
We were worried, I think, that the excitement would wear off and we
Yes.
would lose volunteers, but it hasn't so far. And the other key thing that we knew is that we didn't come from the hospitality industry and that we needed somebody to show us the ropes as well. And we've got a great guy, David Lynch, as well, that, showed everybody how to pour a beer. He's been patient with everybody. It's different to go 20 years in the industry to then having volunteers who, couldn't put a head on a beer. So it was a whole new world for him as well.
The volunteers are the lifeblood of Australian society, no doubt.
Yeah.
They do bring a unique set of challenges as opposed to having paid employees. How have you found that process of managing so many volunteers?
It's an ongoing learning experience. At this point of time, there are still better ways of doing what it is that we're doing, that we've done to date. There's more education to do. Like everything that's happened over the last 18 months, it's identifying what the problems are and then finding solutions for it. We've learned how to become managers of a hospitality business. I'm a civil engineer. I can now say on my resume that, yes, I've got experience in the hospitality industry now.
Well, let's talk about that because neither of you, as you've mentioned, had hospitality experience. You're a civil engineer, grew up in Sydney originally, I believe.
Correct. Moved down to Coaldale 34 years ago.
With a young family at the time, or?
Young family at the time. Our son started at preschool there, and within the first 12 months he went to school there. So we moved out of Sydney such that where we started our kids' education, formal education, that was where we were going to stay. So we luckily picked Coaldale. It's been a great community to grow up in.
Had you had much exposure to the club industry before moving to Coaldale?
My father was director of Harbord Diggers for a number of years. I've been always been a member of the club wherever I've lived, whether that's been in Sydney or Goulburn or Canberra or whatever. I've always been a member of the club and I've always looked to enjoy what a club offers you. And at Coaldale I've been in the golf club, the snooker club, the bowls. I get a lot back out of my club. So that's why I've always been with clubs.
And Mel, what about your background? You mentioned you moved down there 7 years ago. What was where were you living beforehand and what do you do for a
Annandale.
career?
We're in Inner West, Sydney. So, and my background is interior design, but also work for Commonwealth Bank, rolling out branch and community spaces and learning about zones and, what makes a successful retail business. So I think that's all come into play for me, yeah.
Now, I'm going to talk to you about what it took to revive the club because you did have to make a decision to sell off some of your poker machine entitlements. Tell us about that process. Was it a contentious decision at the time?
So we had an extraordinary general meeting in 2022. I think it was July, August. And at that meeting, the board proposed to sell some of the pokies. And it was rejected because at that point of time, there wasn't a lot of faith that the board had a plan for the club to survive long term. When we put it to the extraordinary general meeting in February, we had 78 members come to the meeting, which was quite a lot for our club, and every hand went up to say, yes, we support selling the pokies. But I think part of that was because in the previous extraordinary general meeting, people just didn't really think the club was going to close. And a lot of the groundswell of support has been because people realised that, yes, the club could actually close and if something isn't done, it will close permanently.
Mel, you still have 6 poker machines, so it's still part of the mix. Do you foresee a time when you might sell off the remainder of those entitlements?
Not yet. I think they're an asset that's a part of the club. I think we haven't tried to isolate anybody. We have kept some gambling as part of our mix. We've kept entertainment at the forefront. And then, there's all these community clubs and community-based that we support as well. So we've tried to make it a mix that everyone's invited into our club.
Live music's a big focus for the club, and I think this is probably your area of expertise. Tell us what sort of entertainment's on offer at the club these days.
So I've learnt a lot through the 24-hour economy as well as a few of the other clubs around too, which is around putting live music on and how to do that. We've been successful in getting a grant as well. But we knew that we had to draw the community back to come for entertainment. And like I mentioned before, we wanted to bring females back into the mix and families and all different demographics. When we first opened the club, we had musicians that played for nothing. to help us survive. And that was a really big offering. You know, some of them live week to week, and they all came forward and put on entertainment to draw the crowds there. That was huge for us. We've had quite a few benefit concerts that have happened. We've had Irish events, we've had heavy metal music, we've had folk, we've had blues, and recently we put on our first music festival as well, which was a big success.
And tell us about the music festival. How long did it run for? And
Yeah, so we had it on a Sunday, and this was a new test for Greg and I, as well as all of the volunteers that were put under pressure to get those beers out quickly. So it was called Coachella, and we've had a lot of music promoters that have actually helped us put on this entertainment, and we work out a great deal with them. But for me, it was great. We had small kids at the front listening to the music, sitting on the dance floor, and then we had older people outside, as well as everything in between, just coming together and enjoying a night out. So that was great.
We had our 75th anniversary last year, which was at the end of July, which was a great event that we celebrated with the sub-branch. We had Tim Freeman do a benefit concert as well. So we've been blessed with events that have been important to people, that brought people into the club.
We've had a lot of locals. There's a big music industry and a lot of people that live down our way, and they've all stepped forward. We've got another thing that we're working on at the moment, which is about putting on short films as well. So our movie nights have been really popular as well. So that's something different that we're doing.
so fast forward 2 years from the time that the club initially closed its doors, you've now got 3,000 members. Do you think those members have a new appreciation for their club?
I think so. I think everyone's proud to be a part of that club. We always say there's always something going on at Coaldale RSL, and that's what we've been running with. We've been lucky enough to have a lot of media attention as well. And there's a sense of pride and emotion when you get to watch that in the club with everyone on TV and just think, oh, look at us. We've really stepped up and saved this place, but we've done more than that. We've actually gotten to know our neighbours a lot more, and that has been the special part of it.
It has been.
Yeah.
It's been really nice to actually know the name of the face that you walk past going down the street and say good day to you now. Say, good day, Mick, good day, Malcolm. You know the people's names, and you can stand there and have a beer with them at the bar. It's good.
Speaking of things that are good and the sense of pride that you felt, tell us about the Special Judges Award at the Clubs and Community Award earlier this year. You were up on stage accepting the award.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
I don't think anybody was as excited as I was, maybe a little bit too excited, but I think we had, the way it had been done, it was the award right at the end of the night as well, and to hear our name called for a special award was something great about representing, your neighbour who works there and cleans every day, and she's a special lady that has this sense of pride and ownership and purpose for coming to the club, and to get up there and have it recognised by everyone in the state and Clubs New South Wales who also thought it was pretty cool. I had a lot of pride that night.
Must have been a special moment for you too to know that the club had been recognised, knowing where you'd come from, the difficult times that had come before.
I think we called you straight away.
Called me straight away. Embarked on this path purely because I didn't want the club to close. To find so many people with the same energy and the enthusiasm and the desire has been fabulous, and for us to pick up awards along the way to say, well, yes, it's not just a good thing that you've done for yourself, it's a good thing that you've done for the community. It's just a bonus. It really is.
Yeah.
Do you have a new appreciation for the industry that you're operating in as well now, knowing that there are so many clubs out there? I know your club was one of the beneficiaries of the Clubs Helping Clubs initiative that Clubs New South Wales run, whereby big clubs across New South Wales will buy tickets to conference for smaller clubs. And I know, Greg, you were able to attend the Gold Coast conference this year. How great an appreciation does that give you of the industry that we all work in?
It has given me an insight, well and truly, into what the industry is all about. Going to the AGM and the conference up there at the Gold Coast was so nice to meet so many people that were interested in what it was that we were doing, what it was that we've achieved, and to be able to speak to other people and say, oh, yeah, this is an issue, and they say, yeah, well, this is the way you can look at doing it, etc. It was very, very enlightening. It was nice to be part of that community. It is a community. The boards of directors, etc. I could tell once I got there that they knew each other. They'd seen each other on a regular basis. Meeting Rebecca, the CEO, was good. It was just a wonderful experience. Just so glad that I could get there, and I would not have got there unless we had the support.
I think Wes MacArthur might
And
have
Wes,
bought that ticket.
let's thank Wes. And then also, so Wes helped Greg get to that event. And also we've had help from Bankstown as well, Michael from Bankstown too, who's...
Michael Clancy, yes.
Michael Clancy, who's really helped us out with any questions that we have. And that was from winning the award at the Clubs New South Wales Awards night as well, that we actually made that contact. But for me, sitting back in that room and just watching all of the community work that the clubs do as well, and I think that's why we were so surprised, because there's so many good things that are happening out there that you don't hear about, that we thought, there's no way that, we even stand a chance near to some of the domestic violence support, for example.
It must be reassuring to know that if you do face a challenge you haven't come up again before and you're not quite sure what to do, you can pick up the phone to the CEO of one of the biggest clubs in the state.
Yes,
Helps Greg.
It's very, very helpful. I have to say that for those first few months I was rather ignorant of what Clubs New South Wales has to offer. Now that I understand it, now that I've been able to tap into it, it's good. It's just nice to know that there's support there for us.
Yeah, and I think we needed some support along the way with media as well. Like, we had a media incident and I was able to pick up the phone straight away. We've got support when we were doing our lease as well. So we have had that ongoing support all the time.
Now, you two are a team down there. Greg, you're the secretary manager, and obviously, Mel, you're the president of the club. Tell us how you work together, what your areas of responsibility are, and finally, how many hours you put into this every week.
We're two oddbods, I think. We're totally different, but we work and respect what the other person does, I think. And that's, for me, it's around setting the direction, the creative ideas, the social media, the marketing I look after, and the events and that part. Greg does all the jobs that I couldn't do.
I just do the nuts and bolts. Well, that's my role. I spend time at the club working with David, working with Mel, working with the other members of the board, working with the bar staff, the volunteers. Mel and I have both got a background of project managers, and we both understand that to make a job work, to make something happen, there are people that you need to tap into to get the information and then be able to digest that and then come up with the direction to go. And that's why we both appreciate each other. We both know that that I have a skill set that Mel doesn't have, and Mel has a skill set that I don't have. But put us together, and with the other board members, yes, we have a very thorough skill set, and toss David into the mix, it works.
Yeah. And the other board members, they all bring different skills, and different insights, different age groups as well, and different experience. And as a board, I would say we get along really well. So, and that helps.
You've avoided the question of how many hours a week. Could you put a number on it?
Greg's more guilty than I am of the hours. I've tried to back off, but yeah.
I had a highly paid 50-hour-a-week job. I'm probably still doing 40 hours a week, but not a lot of income comes out of it. a lot of self-satisfaction, job satisfaction, but it horrifies my wife because I promised her I was going to retire and spend a lot of time with her, but I've retired. I'm just not finding that free time.
Well, she's given up now. She's joined you.
Yeah.
So she looks after the volunteers. She looks after the volunteer roster.
She does.
But even all of the board members, I think we're all put a lot of stress on our own family. We spent a lot of hours there at the beginning, but I'm happy to say as we've progressed, that pressure has eased off.
Tell us about the next 5 to 10 years for Coaldale RSL. A question for both of you. Where do you want to be in a decade's time?
We need to set up a model that is going to survive the long term. At the moment, we have a model which has survived the short term. We need to move that forward. And Mel and I have started to discuss the future and what we need to do now to ensure the long-term survival of the club. We're still learning. We're still realising what it is that we've achieved, but that's all well and good. It's what we still need to achieve, what the club needs to achieve to be there well past my time of living in Coaldale. It needs to find its niche in the locality, and that's what Mel's doing. Mel's redefined what the club does, redirected the club away from what it was doing before to something which should, if nurtured properly, do the long term.
A place for everyone. I think
Yes.
volunteers will always be part of the fabric, though. It's what makes it an actual joy and special to walk in there. So that's always going to be, but it's more around the office roles, the marketing roles, everything else that we need to set up to make that sustainable.
We need to put a buffer behind us to be able to survive, whether it's another pandemic, whether it's another couple of wet summers, etc. The difference in business to the club with fair weather to poor weather is massive. So you've actually got to put something away to survive those bumps that are going to come along, and to then come out the other side and say, yep, dust yourself off you go again.
Mel and Greg, absolutely inspirational story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, and thanks for your time on the Club Life podcast.
Thank you.
Darren.
And we'd like to invite
Appreciate it.
everyone to come visit us.
Yes, come on down to the entertainment capital of the East Coast of Australia, Coaldale RSL.
It's a day.
Thank you.
Melissa Ellery and Greg Todd, the President and Secretary Manager of Coaldale RSL there. And that's all we have time for in today's episode of the Club Life podcast. Thanks for listening. If you're a new listener, don't forget you can listen to our back catalogue of interviews. Catch up on clublife.com.au, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning into this podcast. Search Club Life Podcast to find us, and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have a suggestion on who might make an interesting guest, get in touch with the team by emailing clublife@clubsnsw.com.au. Thanks again for listening, and bye for now.